How We Create Ourselves by F.W. Sears, M.P., General Lecturer, New Thought Church, New York. In the Old Thought world, we have been taught that some power outside of ourselves, which we have called by various names, but which most of us call God, created us, and created us in the image and likeness of Himself. As we have gone on down the line and taken an inventory of ourselves, the more imperfect we have been found, the more glad have we been to attribute the creation to God. While the more perfect we are, the more glad have we been to ascribe that perfection to ourselves. We are taught by the Bible, and in fact by all religions, that in the beginning God created the universe and everything that is in it, and that He had nothing whatever out of which to create it but Himself. In other words, that everything in the universe, whether manifested in what we call material form, or manifesting in any form, animate or inanimate, seen or unseen, was the projection of God. And as God had nothing out of which to create it but Himself, it must therefore be God. Every religion has been founded upon this idea, and after it has promulgated this wonderful truth, has at once attempted to disprove it, and in attempting to do so has created a devil or some destructive force which was outside of and separate from God. As a matter of fact, there's only one power, one energy in the universe, but there are two manifestations of it. One is constructive and the other destructive. One is the creating and the other the destroying manifestation. This must always be so, because only as matter is projected into form or created, the form destroyed, recreated, refined, and redestroyed, can the process of refining matter into spirit proceed. Without going into a long outline and tracing the evolution of this thing we call matter from the atom in the mineral kingdom through the various kingdoms into that of man, let us start with man at the beginning of this incarnation, the beginning of ourselves with this present life as we know it. We must go back momentarily, however, before we can begin with the birth of this particular physical body which we are now occupying, because it had its beginning in this particular form in this incarnation at the time of our birth, but the ego which came and inhabited it at birth and which leaves it at death has always existed, and has inhabited many physical bodies prior to this one. At the time of our birth, we, and when I say we, I mean this ego, this interior consciousness, selected this physical body. We selected the parents and environment which it was to have at birth. And we made that selection because the parents and environment produced in this incarnation the effects which related us with the causes we had set in motion in former incarnations. There's no such thing as an accident in the universe. Every so-called accident, everything that has ever occurred, has a natural, normal cause which produced its effect. And when we learn to go deeply into these things, back beyond the external world, we're able to trace the effect back to its cause again and again. And so I say to you, there is no such thing as an accident. The time of our birth, the moment that we were born, right down to the very second, was not an accident. It was the natural result of a natural law. We may not believe it, but that makes no difference with the law. The world before Columbus did not believe the earth was round, and the church excommunicated those who were brave enough to come out and deny such a belief. But that did not make the earth square, as the church and the world declared, and so with these other truths. Whether we believe them or not makes no difference with their truth. The truth exists, and it is for us to learn what that truth is. The time and place of our birth was not an accident. We were born in this physical body at that particular time, place, and parentage because of the causes which we had set in motion in our former incarnation, and we could not have been born at any other time. When this body was born, it's true that it inherited from its father and mother the combined cell consciousness which they imparted to its atoms. And to that extent, we do have the law of inheritance. But our ego would not have come and incarnated in this body had it not been that the causes which it set in motion in former incarnations related it with such inheritance. So, that being true, we really do not inherit anything. The body was simply the instrument which the universal law used to work out, at the beginning of life in this incarnation, the effects of the causes which we had set in motion. As we grew and unfolded from infancy, where did we get the material with which to build our body? In the old thought world, we've been taught that the material which goes to build the bones, the tissue, the blood, and the various cells of the physical body comes from what we eat. But it is not true. While science has not promulgated broadcast the result of its experiments, practical tests have been carried on by scientific men which demonstrate conclusively that the food we take into our physical body has but very little to do with the upbuilding of the cell tissue. The food we take in is the fuel we put under the boilers in the firebox to generate the energy with which the machinery is run. We must have fuel, otherwise we could not generate the energy. But many experiments have been made with men, weighing them and then having them eat several pounds of food, as much as they could stuff into themselves, and then weighing them again immediately afterward. In many of these tests, it's been found that they showed a loss of weight. In other words, had they weighed 172 pounds before eating and ate 4 pounds of food, thus making a total of 176 pounds, they would weigh perhaps 170, 171, or 169 after consuming all that food. Showing what? Showing that the energy used in eating the food was greater than the weight of the food consumed. Now, where did this loss go? How did that 4 to 6 pounds disappear? We've been taught to believe that the principal eliminating organs were the bowels and kidneys, but we know from these experiments that cannot be so. We also know by persons who have worked hard and dissipated their energy, but who ate little or no food, yet sometimes they gained rather than lost weight. A case came under my notice several years ago of a man who had been carrying on a series of experiments in fasting. At first he fasted from 1 to 10 days at a time. Finally he started on a 25-day fast. He weighed immediately after he had eaten his last meal. During the 25-day period he walked from 10 to 25 miles each day and performed his usual work, which was that of a magazine editor. During the time of his fast, only water was taken into his stomach. On the 25th day, he completed his period of fasting by taking a 25-mile walk, and upon being weighed, it was found he had lost just exactly 1 pound. The above is only one of many illustrations I could give, but it is sufficient and shows that it's not the food we take into our stomach which builds the body, or that gives us the material from which bone, blood, and tissue are made. Where does that come from, and where does the waste product go? We know that in contests in the boxing ring, sparring exhibitions, wrestling matches, etc., the combatants frequently lose from 10 to 20 pounds in weight because of the energy which they use. Where does it go? Notwithstanding the fact that they were trained down to the very last minute and all surplus flesh eliminated in order that they might be fit for such a contest, yet the energy which they used caused a loss of 10 to 20 pounds. The physical body has 4 eliminating organs: the bowels, the kidneys, the pores of the skin, and the lungs. And it's through our lungs that we draw from this formless energy everywhere around us, the real material from which this body is made, and from which we make our environment. It is back into this formless energy that the waste product from both body and environment, the product that we have utilized, refined, and cast off, goes. Let us look at the process as we know it in one particular thing: the rain. It comes from this formless vapor everywhere around us, and as a result of its own law, this vapor gathers together, gets heavier and heavier, lowers the vibrations of its atoms, and becomes what we call clouds. The vibrations of the atoms continue to slow down and finally become so heavy, so slow, that it begins to fall in what we call rain. When its vibrations are lowered still more, we have the form called ice, hail, or snow. The ice, hail, and snow melts and becomes water. The water evaporates and becomes vapor or steam, which in turn becomes invisible. And so this process is going on continuously and forever. Ice, water, vapor, and the invisible vapor which vibrates at such a high rate that it's impossible for us to see it, are all one and the same, only their atoms are moving at different rates of vibration. They all come from this formless energy, invisible to our human eyes. But when we have a more developed sense of sight, we can look into and see it with our interior consciousness, our inner self. Everything that we have ever had produced in material form here on this external plane, no matter what it may be, is held for us in solution in this formless energy, this vacant space, which is everywhere around us. The form we are manifesting here on this earth plane is always changing. Visible things are only incomplete and changing shadows of the real. But the one life in all and through all never changes. Now, let us see in regard to ourselves how we at first create, then destroy, and continue the process of recreating and destroying this body. We began life here as a result of the causes we had set in motion in our former incarnations. And we go on in our childhood days unconsciously following out the law of attraction established by those relationships. At the birth of this physical body, it was stamped with the combined cell consciousness and intelligence given it by its parents. And we continued under our old law, the old causes we had set in motion, until such a time as this ego, this inner consciousness, this thing which comes and inhabits the body at birth, takes full possession of the body. That time varies from 4 to 15 years of age. In fact, I've seen some children 20 years old whose ego evidently did not have full possession of their body. And I have seen other children as young as 4 years where I was sure their ego had possession of their body. However, the age matters not. The time comes when the ego does get full and complete possession of the physical body, and then it has within itself power to change these old laws, to set new causes in motion, which will antidote and change the effects of the old causes with which it has been relating up to this time. Every life makes its own laws under which it shall live, and it makes those laws through the thoughts that it thinks. We manifest today what our thoughts built yesterday. When the ego gets control of this physical body, it can choose from that moment what the body shall do, which master it shall serve. Whether it shall serve its old master, these old causes which it has heretofore set in motion, and through them the old habits which it has heretofore established. Or whether it shall change those old laws, those old habits, those old characteristics. We are greater than our horoscope, greater than all the fixed habits we have established heretofore, greater than all the character we have formed during past incarnations in our progress down the ages. We can antidote any quote-unquote evil effects and set in motion new causes which will produce quote-unquote good ones. We always have one more positive thought than negative one. This thing we call character in the life of an individual is simply fixed habit, the result of fixed thinking, which we have established in ourselves back down the line of our cosmic journey. And when any of these characteristics, when any of these fixed habits are such as we do not wish to continue, we can begin any time, any moment we recognize we do not want them, to displace and set them aside. And we begin the setting aside by changing in our thought world the thoughts that we think. That which we persistently imagine ourselves to be in consciousness do we become in material form. How does thought establish that relationship? With every breath we inhale, we are drawing to us from this formless energy from whence all material is obtained. Invisible, it is true, but nonetheless real, for the things that are unseen are the true forces and substances of life. We are drawing the atoms which go to make up this physical body and our environment. What regulates the kind of atoms we draw from this formless energy? The vibrations of the atoms of our physical body under which we are working regulates it. We know that when we strike a note on the piano, we get one vibration, or one tone, or one sound. We can strike any number of other keys and not get one that is in harmony with the first, or we can strike one that is in perfect harmony. There are levels upon levels of harmonious notes scattered out in this formless energy. And whatever harmony we strike in our own vibration determines the relationship which we establish with this invisible and formless energy and the kind of material we attract to us from it. When we strike the note of anger, we draw, with the breath we inhale while we are angry, the material from that level of consciousness, which makes for discord in our body. It makes for more anger. It may make for loss in our environment. It may make for hatred of someone else. It may make for disease in our body. It may manifest in 1,000 different ways, because there are many, many different manifestations that discord will make in our body or environment. We establish a relationship with such currents through the thoughts we think. Every thought has its own special and peculiar vibration, and the vibration within us is what establishes the relationship with the currents in this formless energy where we get the atoms for our body and environment. We can establish inharmonious relationship in many different ways. Anger, hatred, fear, worry, anxiety, jealousy, criticism, condemnation, strife, resistance, resentment. Any one of the many, many different destructive emotions will strike some chord in the universal energy with which it harmonizes. And it will attract to us while we are on that key, while we are in that inharmonious condition, atoms which will make for destructive and inharmonious effects in our body and environment. But when we know the law, we know how to attune our body. We know how to get the vibration within which will relate us with the constructive things. These are as numerous as the destructive ones, in fact more so, and it takes only comparatively little of the constructive power, the constructive energy, to displace a great many destructive effects. When we know this law, we begin to change our bodily vibrations, using every method we know to make them more and more harmonious. The physician uses this law unconsciously when he administers the drug. It changes the vibration of the physical body and restores harmony to the diseased part of the body when it does the work the physician intends and expects it will do. Having established the harmonious relationship, the individual is able to strike a more harmonious current in this formless energy and draw unto him more and more of this harmony. One and all use this same law in all forms of healing. The law being the same, whether it's the doctor, the osteopath, the chiropractic, the mental scientist, the faithist, the Christian scientist, or the new thoughtist. We are all more or less familiar with the story of the confusion of tongues at the Tower of Babel, how it said that after the flood, the children of men on earth all spoke one language, and in order to prevent the people being drowned, should another flood come, they began to build the Tower of Babel. But after it had reached a certain height, there came a confusion of tongues. The Lord, or law, came down and made them talk to each other in strange tongues. That symbolizes one of the things we always want to remember. What is this one language which the world had prior to that time? And what is this confusion of tongues which it has had since then? The one language is a recognition of the one life in everything and our harmonious relationship with it. The confusion of tongues is our separation from the one life in our thought world, the recognition of evil in our consciousness, the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the inharmony or discord which results. With the one life, this God consciousness in and through everything, it is evident that everything is some manifestation of God or good. When we realize this truth and begin to consciously manifest within ourselves this one life, we are then able to speak to it in everything: mineral, vegetable, animal, man, animate or inanimate, seen or unseen. When we speak to and touch the one life in our consciousness, which we can do when we are harmonious, and the more harmonious we are within ourselves, the easier it is to touch it. When we can do this, we can speak in the one tongue, the one universal language of love and harmony, which all can speak, hear, and understand. The condition during the first part of the construction of the Tower of Babel symbolizes this universality, this one life of love and harmony throughout the world. But when mankind gets away from this one language, from this interior love and harmony, living on the outside, on the external, then there comes inharmony, discord, differentiation, bickering, the confusion which inharmony and discord make in a life. And as mankind goes on in this thought attitude, the discord produces strange tongues and inharmonious environment. Why? We all know, those of us who have tried to live this life of harmony, that the old life of inharmony, of discord, which we have touched in the past, produces a strange language to us today, a language that is hard for us to understand. We know as we look back over our own history, our own life, and see when we lived under this law of force, under this law of must, where we compelled things to come our way rather than attracted them to us, that the language we spoke in those old days is a strange one to us now. It is a confusion of tongues. It is a language that, when we have left it behind, we never return to it again. And in that old thought language of confusion, strife, and discord, we relate with the inharmonious things from these unseen currents, and we attract to us the material, the atoms, which make for inharmony and discord in both body and environment, or in one or the other, depending upon where that energy finds the least resistance when it comes to materialize. But when we live in the harmony of this new language, when we live in this one universal life, when we get back before the babel of tongues and speak in the consciousness which all can understand, no matter whether we are Jew or Gentile, black or white, English, French, German, Chinese, Japanese, no matter what external or objective language we may speak, there is always this one great, beautiful, universal language we all know, and we use it to continue attracting to our physical body and environment the wonderful, harmonious material from out this formless energy, refining it again and again, casting it off, destroying its form, recreating, refining, and redestroying, until we make our body a fitting temple for the living God, and we produce in our environment a heaven here on earth.